About the felon's MRI. Let's look into that. Welcome to Scrying Out Loud. My name is Trevor. First off, a huge thank you to everybody who's subscribed to the channel. Thank you for liking, watching, commenting on the videos. Hitting the like button and commenting really does help the videos get to more people. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you've been sharing the videos or promoting the channel on your own social media platforms, a big, big thank you. Um, this channel's grown incredibly. We're about to our 1 year anniversary, so that's exciting. And we're almost at 40,000 subscribers, so huge thank yous. On Patreon, if you're interested, you can purchase my tarot course. It's 20 videos. They altogether run about 8 hours in length. There's uh, worksheets that go with most of the lessons, little handouts, PDFs that can be used to kind of supplement the videos as well. And if you buy the video before or buy the course before December 5th, you get $22.22 off the course. And plus, you can take $50 off a personal reading with me. You just have to email me to schedule the personal reading. It doesn't have to be this month or even next month. We can schedule it way out there or um, not at all if you don't want one. Okay, so for whatever reason, the felon admits he has an MRI. What was that, a couple months ago, a month ago? Time's starting to condense a little bit, but out of the blue, and I think at the time I said, he's just gonna start telling the truth, and it's going to create problems for him. Um, we shall see more of that as we go through the year. So about the MRI, when we read on that before, we said we thought it was focused on the abdominal region and his heart, possibly his brain, but I didn't think so. So turns out that that's where it was focused. They looked at his heart and they looked at his abdominal region. I thought they were possibly scanning for cancers. I sort of have the same feeling, but it's a little bit different, and I'll explain the images here in just a second. But I want to look pretty exclusively. One, I want to look to see is anything going to come of the war crime committed on the boat. Um, so they attacked the boat and then they bombed it a second time after people were helpless, which is murder. That's a war crime. So I want to see, does anything happen with that? And then as far as the MRI, I want to see, did they find anything related to uh, his kidneys, his liver, um, his heart? Uh, you know, are they hiding information? Because of course they are. Did they find any hardening of arteries? Um, do they suspect that there's a relationship with this with dementia? So we're kind of just going to do a real deep dive. Is there a buildup of toxins that I want to talk about specifically? And then also, uh, what was the point? We're going to release the results of the MRI. We find out they did an MRI on his heart and his abdominal cavity, I should say. And then they tell us, everything was good. And it was preventative. MRIs are not preventative. Preventative stuff stops things from happening. Right? Just the word is stupid. Um, an MRI is not going to stop you from getting a disease. An MRI might detect a disease you already have. It's not going to stop you. Vaccines are preventative, not MRIs. So, what's the point? Do they really think we're that gullible or that dumb that they can give us this information and we're supposed to go, oh, okay, that makes sense? It does not make sense. It raises more questions, if anything. So, Let's start with the bombing of the boat. So they bombed the boat, then they went back and they bombed it again after the people on the boat were in a basically a helpless position. So this would be a violation of some war crimes. Is anything going to come of this? Um, the Five of Pentacles being left out in the cold. It's kind of the feeling I get. I think there's a couple schools of thought here that I have. Should Democrats in 2026 run on the felonious committing war crimes? I don't think that wins you an election. Okay. It is not okay to commit war crimes. I think they handle that after they take over. Um, and I think when Speaker Jeffries, or he will be Speaker, um, the minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries, basically stated, they're not going to look into that. Well, I don't know that that's true. They're certainly not going to run on it. And maybe that's cold and that's callous, but it wouldn't play well in the places they need to win to take back the House. It just wouldn't. Questioning the military, it's a complicated thing, although they should investigate it. That's not my personal view on it. That's just what I'm getting from the politics of it all and the how they're going to run in 2026. They're going to focus mainly on the economy, affordability, these types of things. Yeah, okay. So the Emperor card off the bat. Of course, this is a war crime. Textbook definition of it. You know, we don't need to sit here and rank war crimes by how bad they are. It was a war crime. Let's leave it at that. The King of Wands, I do think there'll be a time and a place where this is addressed. I don't think it's soon. I'm not even sure this is the only war crime they've committed. And I on my Patreon, I did a reading on whether Bondi and Hegseth and all of them would go to prison. And it's kind of like, yeah, Hegseth has done bad things, but I don't think they're going to ever charge him with a crime. But I think he'll be ostracized at the end from the world stage. The Four of Pentacles, stability. I think that makes a lot of sense, but let's keep going. The Hermit card, isolation, um, introspection, different perspectives. I do think eventually people will come around to the idea that we can't just be bombing boats to bomb boats. And if we do bomb boats and we're able to take, survivors without just executing them, because that's essentially what they did, that's the way it's supposed to work. Especially if you're not 100% sure who they are and what they're doing and whether they're guilty, probably shouldn't be bombing these boats at all. But um, I think people will, if the Democrats make a big, this is probably not a popular opinion, but on this channel, but I think this is true. I think if Democrats were to make a big deal out of this, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't, I'm just saying if they do, I think it backfires. I just do. I just don't think that there's too much to focus on right now. We have an economy that's not doing very well. We have people that have a lot of affordability issues. We have just a ton of stuff going on. And what people are going to hear is that the Democrats are bashing the military. And that's what Republicans will say. And it'll work because it always works. So, um, wish fulfillment, the Nine of Cups, the voters, new partnership, the Two of Cups, and the Two Wands. This is a crossroads. So, he abused power, but the support for the military kind of would have to wane in order for this to happen. If the military were ICE, perhaps we're there, but we're not. So I don't think anything happens. The voters will still back the military because that's just what people say they do. And it's too nuanced of an argument because we're not talking about the whole military is guilty of a war crime. We're talking about a very specific set of people, right? But that's not the way it'll be heard. And so I think this will the voters just want stability, and wherever we can find stability, that's what the voters want. And stability in the military um, seems to still be there. So I think the Democrats do look into it later. I think voters eventually will get a different perspective through talking to people. And eventually there's probably a change in the way we're approaching this, especially after the felon's gone and the Republicans are gone in 28. So, yeah, I mean, the boats here again, the Six of Swords. This popped up earlier when I was reading on this. Yeah, people are going to pass their judgment, and rightfully so. What was done was wrong. But, there's going to be a calculation that it's not a winning campaign issue, and that's the way it's going to go down. And we have to ask ourselves, do we want Republicans still to be in charge, or do we want to just go along with the Democrats' plan on how to win the election? Things aren't that easy. It's a very tricky game. Shouldn't be a game at all, but unfortunately it is. It's a calculus of how to get to 50 plus one votes, 50% plus one votes. And I don't think this is a winning issue, at least not in middle America. Okay. So the felon had an MRI. So when I was scrying on this the last time, I kept seeing, images around his kidneys and his liver and his heart, which turns out that's right. That's what they were looking at. And I think I even said at the time that, I think they were looking for cancers. I don't think that's right. It could be, but I don't think that's quite right. I think what's going on here is that occasionally when you get older, your arteries can start to harden. And this particularly can happen in conjunction with congestive heart failure, which I do think is going on. I do think they looked at blood flow in his neck as well. They didn't put that in the report, but I think they did. I think they went up the heart and looked to see what's going on with blood flow to the neck, and I think that it's limited. I don't think there's a lot they can do. I think his body is producing like it feels like this would be treated with like a chemotherapy, but it's not really a cancer. It's like an unwanted protein or something that keeps circulating around in the blood, and it deposits itself particularly in the abdomen region of the pancreas, the liver, and the kidneys. And not exactly sure what this would be called, but it's something like a hardening of the arteries, and it can be quite serious, and I think it is in this case. We'll take a look with the cards here in just a second. It also felt like the blood going to his brain and other things in our face and head uh, is not pumping the way it should be. His heart output is not good. Uh, the reuptake is not good either. So this chronic venous insufficiency, which is why his ankles swell and he can't wear his shoes, that is just a symptom of a much bigger problem. The bruising on the hand, I think, is consistent with this idea of the medicines that might be taken to kind of counteract this kind of, I'm going to call it thickening of the blood. That's not actually what's going on, but there's protein in his blood that shouldn't be there. That's what it feels like to me. You can just kind of see these irregularly shaped things, and I feel like they deposit into certain organs of the body, and it can be quite serious. But they treat it with like a chemotherapy type drug. I don't know if they're treating this or not. We'll look at that as well. Are they treating it? Are they choosing not to? Because the problem is, when you're in congestive heart failure, sometimes these drugs can put more strain on your heart and defeats the purpose. And, you know, is this going to take him out next week? It's possible, right? It certainly is possible. I still think he goes by a stroke. I don't think he dies of a chronic illness, although this will develop into one, within a year, I think, if he doesn't pass before then, but I'm pretty sure he will. Um, so it's like it's a hardening of the walls of the heart. There's proteins being deposited around. That's the only word I think of is proteins. And the liver, kidneys, pancreas. And so they were checking to the extent of the damage. That's what they were assessing. It wasn't preventative. That's MRIs just aren't preventative. It's like an X-ray being preventative. We're going to X-ray your arm to see if you've broken your bone in your arm, just as a precaution, even though you have no pain in your arm. Doesn't make any sense. So clearly they're lying. This isn't shocking. So, okay, how should we start uh, this? Let's look at his kidneys, liver, and pancreas. I think we can do all three of those at the same time. They're in roughly the same region on the one side of your body, and another kidney on the other side, if you have both your kidneys. Um, did they look at this? What did they find? I think his liver functions are abnormal. I think his kidney functions are abnormal. I think well, you can see it when he talks. He's clearly gets short of breath pretty easily. This is a really good sign of there's something wrong with his heart. Um, and no, we don't have the full story on the MRI. Will we get it? I'm not entirely sure that we'll get it before he's gone, but there'll be lots of questions after he passes about this. Can you tell us about his kidneys, liver, pancreas? The Knight of Cups popping out, messages coming forward. Maybe we will. Maybe you're wrong. That's right. Okay, so it's kidneys, pancreas, and liver. Particular, I'm drawn to the kidneys and the liver, not so much the pancreas. Yeah, it's like the Eight of Swords, right? It's about confinement, restriction. It's like this protein is inhibiting everything from working correctly. Like I think it hardens the heart. I think it just deposits in spots in the kidneys and livers, and particularly if it got serious enough, I think, they might have to go in and put a shunt to open up a duct, for example. I don't think we're there yet, although I think they're concerned about it. I think that was part of why the MRI was done. There's a lot of constriction going on here with the way blood moves throughout his body. It's not getting to all the extremities. That's why that bruise never heals on his hand. There's a lot of volatility here. I think there's a lot unknown exactly about this disease. I don't think it's very common. I think there are similar things that are common, but this one feels pretty uncommon. It, you know, there's an arrhythmia to his heart. We've talked about that. There's this kind of galloping sound, ta-tud, 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 rather than just boom, 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 boom. It's got like a galloping heart, um, which in of itself is concerning, but there are things that can be done to treat that as well. But I don't think anything's working. I think that's why they're going in. That's why I went to the hospital twice. This idea is routine, but this is the second time in 6 months that he'd been there. Nothing really routine about that. It's pretty burdensome. I think it makes it really hard for him to get around physically. I think we'll learn about that later. I think, he's not in great shape to start with. There's many healthier 79-year-old men than him. In fact, most of them probably are that aren't ill are healthier than him. This it's taking its toll on him. I think this is also part of the irritability, the snapping and saying, um, shut up, piggy, I think was the expression. And then, what are you, stupid? I called the reporter stupid the other day. Yeah, there's something wrong with his heart, and it's affecting the kidneys, liver, and pancreas. The pancreas less so, though, I feel. I think his heart is producing some sort of protein. I don't know if that makes sense medically. I'm not a doctor. This is just a tarot reading, entertainment purposes only. Uh, could be right, could be wrong. But there's something very wrong with his heart. It's not beating correctly. The exterior of it is hardened. While they might say the chambers of his heart are the right size, that part could be true, but that part doesn't necessarily mean anything without knowing whether the blood is filling the chambers before it's exiting, right? That's not that simple. And it feels like there's these abnormal cells or proteins. I think they're proteins that they're kind of like they feel sticky. They kind of when I was scrying on this, they feel kind of like um like when you clean bubble gum off of a hot sidewalk, you can't really get it all off, and what's left is sticky, but there's no bubble gum there. That's what it feels like. It's like bubble gum. It's kind of graphic, but that's what it feels like. And um it definitely feels like it's affecting his kidneys and his liver more than his pancreas, although I think they don't know. I mean, I think this thing can turn on a dime, right? I think it's one of those types of diseases. I don't think it's classified as a blood cancer, but it would be kind of really akin to a blood cancer because it'd be treated in a similar way of trying to get rid of these proteins, like a chemotherapy, to get these things from being created out. Uh, wow. I get the death card at the center. Um, I do think that ultimately this definitely contributes to his downfall. Uh, is there medications for it? I think they're kind of chemotherapy related. Hopefully, there's somebody that can help us out here that can comment tell me what exactly it is I'm talking about. I couldn't find exactly anything on the when I was looking for it, but I feel like this is the right track. Um, I do think this ultimately is his downfall. I don't know that he dies from the disease as he just dies from like side effects of having it. I think they're worried about giving him drugs to treat it because of how poor his heart is actually functioning, which we won't learn about until after he's gone. But I mean, before we were getting death in the environment around, now it's at the center. I mean, I just don't think it's much longer. He looks terrible. We have the Ten of Pentacles, also an end of a cycle. Two tens here. Uh, Basically, his kidneys and his liver are slowly stopping working. Has he had to have dialysis? It wouldn't surprise me. Um, I don't think that his body's able to expel these toxins. So I think that's why we keep getting the devil card when we look at his health. Um, we get justice. It's like an imbalance. Something's imbalanced, and that's what's causing this particular condition of the hardening of the organs and these deposits of like proteins. I don't know if that's what a fatty liver is. I don't think so, but he has a dementia that's definitely coming about because of these things. It's exasperating it or making it worse. Didn't say that word correctly, but making it worse. The five of swords. This is the card Rosalind Carter showed me for dementia when I did a reading on the Carters. This was a long time ago, after Jimmy Carter had passed. Um, it's it's what's going to basically we're looking at like a systematic organ failure. I think that's what we're looking at. It's just going to keep spreading. It's going to get worse. Doesn't get better. I don't think that's what takes him out. I think he dies of a stroke, but the hanged man, it's just a matter of time. He can't live with this condition for a long time. It feels to me like, the life expectancy after diagnosis is maybe 6 months, 2 years tops. He's probably known about it for a while. So I think things are quite bad. So I think um, his kidneys, his liver, and to a lesser extent, his pancreas are not quite functioning the way they're supposed to. I think the ultimate prognosis is death. I do think this is somewhat terminal. And I think it's just a matter of time for that to happen. Everything's just off balance. They need to worry about his hydration now. They need to worry about a whole bunch of stuff. And, again, the prognosis is death, and he's having a hard time dealing with it, as are his organs. The mental stress doesn't help either. There's something very wrong with his heart. This is the minor arcana death card, the Five of Swords as well. His health is very volatile. This is why he's so almost moody. I talked about him being on mood stabilizers, perhaps. I think, the blood doesn't flow properly to his brain, and then, he's always been mean and said stupid things, but you know, I mean, certainly don't want to give him very much credit. And he's definitely called reporters stupid before, and called Rosie O'Donnell the pig or whatever it was. It's worse and it's more spontaneous. There's something different about it. It sounds different. If you're not listening to him, that's fine. I'll listen for you guys, but it's different. And we have the Ten of Pentacles as well, the end of a cycle. So we have two tens, which are ends of cycles. We have the Death card, which is an end of the cycle. I switched these around. Um, We have restriction, being wounded in battle. I mean, these just are bad cards. You really probably couldn't get a worse reading. He does have good doctors. That's the one thing he's got going for him. But this is just this is part of how his story ends. This is, we're not that far away. And like I said, I feel like this isn't what how he goes exactly, but it's definitely a causation, the Ace of Cups. So yeah. Okay. Let's do this with another deck here. I haven't used this one in a while. This is the Unveiled Tarot. Okay. Are there hardening of his organs and arteries? Um, so what do we need to know about this? Am I right that there's this weird buildup of some sort of protein? That's what it feels like, that there's something that's not there, or there's something there that's not supposed to be there. There's a rigidity to it. Like I think if you were to do like the push in on the abdominal bounce back thing, like you could almost feel that there's some hardening on his liver. I don't think they're super worried about that because I don't think that's what's going to take him out. I think they're more worried about his heart. What do we need to know? I really do feel, and maybe we'll just ask it this way after this reading, that the MRI basically confirmed that he has kind of a terminal diagnosis. Um, Here he is in his, I'm reading the King of Pentacles. They definitely are giving him new medicines. I think part of this, I wouldn't be surprised if this wasn't the second MRI to see how the medicines were working. Um, the Six of Pentacles, the Knight of Swords, things are going downhill fast. And you can see it, just look at him. His skin looks terrible. His hair has changed colors. It's no longer pea yellow, it's just white. Uh, his uh, eyes are droopy. His speech is slurred. Things are going downhill very quickly, and all of this is related. This, I think, I think this is what's causing these mini strokes, because I do think he's having mini strokes as well. But this is what's causing it, is this buildup of this protein. It's sticky. It's not plaque though. It's a protein. I think there's not much that the doctors can do. They're going at this fairly blind. They might try some experimental stuff, but we get the Three of Wands, which is about inevitability. I think inevitably this is just progressing towards death. I mean, it's not that unusual to be diagnosed with a terminal illness um, at 79. The World card is the end of his life cycles and the environment around. Um, yeah, the Knight of Wands. I do think this is making him like more of a jerk than he usually is. It's not that you can be more of a jerk, but because it's making him a jerk. This lashing out at people. Like I don't think he has any impulse control at all, because I think the blood flow to his brain is restricted. And the Nine of Cups, greed, and then the Four of Cups. Like he's just barely keeping his head above water. Like literally, we're on the tipping point here. So, it's inevitable that eventually he's not going to be able to keep his head above water. Death is coming. Um, he's more bombastic, rude, whatever, impulsive. And it's inevitable that one day he just gets to going too fast. Like he can't get his heart rate above a certain, like most of us can get if you're in your 50s, getting your heart rate to 150, 140, that's no problem. Um, but if you're in your near 80, getting your heart rate above 120 can be quite dangerous. In his case, I think it's more like 110 is kind of the cutoff. He's on, I think, a whole bunch of different medicines now, beta blockers to mood stabilizers to cholesterol, which we knew about, to blood thinners, to possibly more. Um, I think the doctors don't really have a good plan here because they're basically just buying time till his life cycle ends. And, the stress and greed of his life, it catches up with you. It just does. Your body knows guilt. Your body knows when well, not the whole world, but 70% of the world hates you. Imagine what that must feel like. 70% of the world hates you. That cannot be good for your health. Uh, I think it's coming quickly. I think we're just, literally watching the strings being pulled here. You know, he can be manipulated on a dime. Uh, they're gonna have to defend this MRI. They're gonna need more explanation, or they won't give one, and that in itself will create a whole bunch of speculation. And I think eventually, his body gives up. The Eight of Cups walks away from all the burdens that he currently holds, which has to do with all this karmic guilt. Um, that's part of the reason why he hasn't crossed over, but that's also part of the reason why he will. It's kind of a weird balancing act there. Okay. So, yes, I think we're right that his organs are hardening and that there's some sort of weird protein buildup. So I'm calling it a protein that might not be right. Um, okay, so let's look. What can you tell us about his heart? And then we'll look at whether he's been diagnosed with the terminal illness, and then we'll end with what's the point of lying to us. I think part of the MRI too was that he doesn't tell the doctors the truth. So ironically, that probably shortened his life. I don't think he's capable of telling the truth, just from a psychological standpoint. What can you show us about his heart? Show us about his heart. Here he is in his own reading. Again, that's good. The King of Pentacles. It means we're on the right track. Uh, okay, I'm just drawn to the water around her feet, the Queen of Cups. I think, again, congestive heart failure, fluid building up around his heart. Of course, he's on a diuretic, I'm assuming, to get the fluid off of his heart. But these things are not fail proof by any imagination. Um, he's definitely illusioned and delusioned about his health. I think he knows he's dying, but I don't think he fully comprehends how close to death he is. He's scared. I think, he holds this Christian worldview of what happens after death, and therefore he's frightened because he knows the things he's done in his life. He's on a lot of medicine for his heart, the Six of Pentacles. The medicines have stabilized things, but they're not a cure, the Queen of Pentacles. Yeah, his heart function's going downhill, the Eight of Wands. The Wheel of Fortune, his health is not the same day to day. Some days are worse than others. Those are the days we don't see him. We only see him on the good days, and they're not very good. And things going on behind the scenes that we can't see. So he's taking a bunch of stuff for his heart. We don't know the full extent of exactly what's wrong with him. His heart function's going downhill. He doesn't fully comprehend that these medicines aren't a cure, although he kind of knows he's dying. I think he does. Congestive heart failure for sure. He's scared of death. He thinks he's fairly stable. I'm not so sure that's true. I think it's more of a 50-50, any day could happen kind of a situation. Maybe not 50-50, but close to it. Underneath, he's got good doctors, but death is coming. Death, then the Hanged Man. Death, we're waiting for it. The Tower happens. I mean, these are terrible cards. And then the Five of Cups, loss. Okay. So working underneath in the shadows, there's death, loss. The Tower, I think, is more of a stroke. It's like a big event, and then the loss happens. So, okay. Has he been diagnosed with a terminal illness? Okay, let me use this deck. Has he been diagnosed with the terminal illness? Just yes or no. I don't think we need to go on forever on this. Yes, I think he's been told it's coming and death isn't that far off in the future. And it could happen at any time, the Page of Cups. So the Wheel of Fortune, the Knight of Swords, and the Page of Cups. The fates are turning one way or the other. It's going to happen, could happen quickly with the Page of Cups, but inevitably he's heading towards death rather quickly. So yeah, I do think that the doctors consider this to be terminal. I don't think any of this comes out till later. And then lastly, what's the point? What's the point? So this is the Gilded Tarot Royale. I used this in the last reading and people are asking, what's the point? What's the point of, I don't think he meant to say he had an MRI. And then I don't think he meant to say we're going to release the results. And because they didn't, they had a preventative MRI. Well, we were told that already. They did preventative imaging. That was in the first health report. There's nothing new here. Other than the MRI was of his heart and abdomen, which are scarier than you might think. Well, I think it's pretty obvious it's scary. Why do they keep lying to us? What's going on here? It's almost, I mean, it sounds crazy because it is crazy. It's like he is so mentally deranged that he thinks there's shame in dying. That's what it feels like. It feels like he thinks there's shame in dying, as if he was somehow going to avoid it. I don't know how he thought that was going to work, but that's what it feels like. The Two of Pentacles, uh, juggling a lot of things. He's worried about judgment if he's ill. I think he worries that, it's kind of like, why has his approval rating gone down so dramatically? Because the cult realizes he's not infallible. Cult leaders only work if they're seen as healthy, strong. He's no longer seen that way. So people are falling out of the cult. That's what's going on. That's his fear. He's very ill, the Four of Swords. He's just very, very ill. And rather than being honest, maybe stepping aside, he's got this perverse notion that dying is unmanly, which is really quite sick and a very odd definition of masculinity. Uh, is very bizarre. Uh, yeah, the Nine of Cups, I think he's hoping he can get by without anybody finding out. But it's not going to happen. I mean, the Five of Pentacles, his health is so poor. People are noticing, just like I said, if you can go back and check it if you want. Back in March and April, I said the media is going to start asking questions about his health. Like it's going to finally happen, you know. Uh, and it started to. Even Fox News had an article today questioning his health. Uh, he's beating himself up and mentally, although his brain does not work the way it used to, uh, as if he did something wrong. And maybe he did morally, throughout his life. I'm sure he's done a ton of things wrong. In fact, we could list them off. But, you know, if you get a terminal illness, that's not because you did something wrong, right? That is crazy thinking, but that's how he's thinking about this, which is even more scary that he's in charge of some of the things he's in charge of. I think it's getting to a boiling point, though, that he can't really handle it very much. And he's starting to leak things out because I don't think he's close to anybody. Who's his friends? I mean, say what you want about President Biden and President Obama, but it was very obvious they were close to their spouses. The felon? I don't think so. Close to his children? I really don't think so. I think I think in some weird ways reporters are his outlet. That's why he goes there. And voters used to be, but they're not anymore. They're turned on him. But one of the reasons what this is about is trying to keep the adoration of people and to keep people thinking that he's stable, although that's just not true. So he's juggling a lot. His health is really poor, but he's trying to come across as being stable. Um, he keeps losing it and yelling at people because he doesn't have anybody to talk to. I know that seems rather like a simplistic way of stating it, but I think that's true. Who's he talking to? Who's really going to listen? Is he even capable of having a conversation deep enough to get any sort of meaningful venting out of the way? I don't think that's true either. His health is really poor, and it's just a matter of time before of sorts. He's very scared of dying. He's scared of losing the voters. You know, that's the one thing that holds onto, and now he's fighting inside his head, thinking, "Oh, if they find out I'm sick, I'm going to lose them." That might be true, which is just shows you how unhealthy MAGA is. But because the cult leader gets sick, and suddenly he's not as godlike, and that changes things. underneath we have the end of a cycle, the Ten of Pentacles, whose cycle the Emperor's, and that's victory for us. So the MRI report was quite revealing. I'm not exactly sure what this is called, the hardening of the organs and the building up of protein, like some sort of irregular, it's a protein that's not supposed to be there. I feel like the treatment would be chemotherapy if you were younger, but I'm not sure that they're treating it. So, all right. Thank you. I'll be back with another reading soon.